So there was one final video that I wanted to record that relates to the primal self. And I know it's been a while, but I know I just need to come back to this final one. So this is not specifically the primal self that I'm talking about, but it's a self that is buried beneath the primal self. And so I've already explained that, my primal self, the primal self comes from when an avatar first comes to Earth and experiences, a deep, deep trauma. This can also happen to, other beings and everything, where they experience, a deep, deep trauma that's been inflicted by fallen beings, and it just changes the course of your psychological future on this planet, when you bring through a primal coping mechanism. So, we're operating no different to an animal, pretty much. Except, there is a higher awareness there beyond it, but it's, there's that reflexive go-to mechanism, which I'm calling the primal self. So I resolved my primal self, and I've described that in the past couple of videos. And so what happened when finally that dropped away, within like a day or two, I could feel sort of, a certain quaking again. I was like, man, have I not done this? Like, it really felt like it was one of the biggest releases I've ever experienced. And, what's going on? Like, I was feeling, a bit irritated, a little bit, just cranky. Just not my usual peaceful self. Like, I really wasn't feeling 100%, and couldn't put my finger on it, because there was sort of just seemed no reason for it. And then I began to see, like, there was, this very heavy judgment coming through of, like, you did something wrong, your primal self did something wrong, but you've got to pay for what your primal self did. And I was really judging myself really, really heavily. Like, it was very, very heavy. But, I just felt into it, and I thought, I know what this is. Like, I know I've done nothing wrong. Like, I know this is all an experiment. And so, I knew it all very in a, like a theoretical, and, in a way that, I have learnt this from the masters, that, we haven't done anything wrong. Like, like when we resolve something, like, we dissolve the karma that's attached with that. So, as much as somebody else's selves, primal selves, probably reacted to me, that's all an illusion, you know what I mean? Like, and if they're hanging on to their reaction, then that's what they're doing, and there's nothing I can do to change that. But, within myself, I have made amends. I had apologized for, my actions, which, when I really looked at all of it, when I really, really stepped back and looked at, what I'd done, it really was like, in my mind, when I was thinking through this, I've done something wrong self, it seemed epically dreadful. Like, I'm talking A1 catastrophic, that, I caused really, really bad things to happen. But when I looked at it in all honesty, like, it was nothing more than me, just being a bit frustrated and expressing that. And kind of pushing people psychologically a bit. So, it wasn't like, it wasn't bad. It really was not. But in my mind, it seemed like that. So that's this mechanism, a psychological mechanism that just blows the reaction way out of proportion. It blows perception out of proportion. Like, you just don't see clearly. And it's because I'm looking through a lens, and the lens was saying, you've done something wrong. I've done something wrong. And with that, there's a whole bunch of other things like, maybe, you must be punished or whatever it might be. So, and this self sort of stems all the way back to, if you're an avatar, and in my case I came from a natural planet, it stems all the way back there. Like, in coming to this planet, there was a vision, there was, an intent to help people, to help people rise out of suffering, to assist people on this planet to awaken from the darkness and the experience of suffering that most people were having. But there was not, there was like an attachment there that, I could do it. And so when I came, technically failed, and then this overlay that you've failed, you've done something wrong, you haven't achieved your outcome, like that's where all of this comes from. It stems from before coming to the planet, so it's sort of buried beneath the primal self. And it wasn't really, I sort of sat with it for a while, and it wasn't really until there was a recent conference in Kazakhstan, and the opening dictation was from Master Moore. And Master Moore just basically opened up by saying, like, what's life on Earth? It's an experience. What is everything? It's an experience. What are you here to do? Experiment with it. Experiment with your consciousness. And so how can anything you do be wrong? It was just like, and he just made it so clear, you've done nothing wrong. You have done nothing wrong. You're here to experiment. And in that moment, I just was like, yeah, it was just an experiment. I tried on the cloak of my primal self in that moment, whenever that was. It was probably a month before. And experimented with it. I thought, I don't need this anymore, and I let it go. Like, how much better does it get than that? There's one less primal self on the planet. Like, it doesn't get much better than that. I don't have to carry that straitjacket anymore. It frees me up to express my Christhood in higher and higher ways. Like, that's what a great outcome to the experiment. Even if it didn't go so good, it doesn't matter. There's always another choice we can make, So that was just the final part to the Primal Self trilogy that I wanted to say, that, no matter what, with your primal self, you've done nothing wrong. There's no mistakes. There are no mistakes. It's only an experiment. You're just trying it out. That's it.